Phil Stasek, a past president of the Space Coast Progressive Alliance, and we'd like to welcome you to another one of our first Thursday events. Tonight's our event is called Educated We Stand. Our special speaker tonight is Jennifer Jenkins. She is a member of the Brevard County School Board, and she's the chair of the organization Educated We Stand. That is a nationwide, nonpartisan organization dedicated to safeguarding education across America. This evening, it's important for all of us to be thinking about the upcoming election. Now, the Space Coast Progressive Alliance all year long has been doing events that have been focused on the coming election, how important various candidates are, the offices that they are running for, and why it is so important that each of us is involved in our democracy. It is something that everybody takes for granted. This year especially, I think we have all felt in our guts the real threats to democracy that face us. So it's important for all of us to be discussing these issues. Tonight, we'll be talking about one of the most important things in our world, and that is our children. Our children are our future. If we raise them properly, if we educate them well, if we nurture them when they're young, then hopefully they'll grow to be good citizens, happy people, and folks that can carry on and make our democracy work for future generations. But taking care of those generations, educating them, is one of our top priorities. And so to have wonderful people as teachers, as administrators, people that take care of our kids and people that teach them well is something that we really depend on. Public education is so important, and our founding fathers here in America recognize that. But well, anyway, I'm going to let Jennifer tell the story about how important education is, and let her carry that on. What I'd like to do is turn the floor over to the president of the Space Coast Progressive Alliance, Karen Houston. Karen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Phil. And good evening, everyone. And I want to certainly thank Jennifer Jenkins for being here today out of her busy schedule, giving us her words of wisdom this afternoon. First of all, I want to thank Jan Moran and the entire Action Projects Committee who's bringing this program here tonight to life. Jan does an awesome job, and the committee does an awesome job. And our next Zoom event will be a program about coping with psychological stress of politics. That'll be on Thursday, November 7th. And you can check all of this out by going to scpaflorida.com. Now, we always ask our panelists our speakers to recommend action items. And we're going to ask you all to please take action. Take it back to your family, to whoever you can get it back to, your neighbors, everybody. Just take it back and just don't sit on it. And so we thank you all for being here tonight. And I'm going to hand this back to Phil.
Thank you very much, Karen. We appreciate that. Thank you for your service as well as the leader of our organization. We really appreciate that. You're a busy woman, and I know you have 1,000 things to do, and we really are glad that you're here for us. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Phil.
One of the
Thank
things
you.
that we always like to do with our events is to open them to our members, to open them to our guests, folks that are here with us tonight on Zoom. If you have, first of all, if you've got questions, we'll be saving those questions for the Q&A period that'll follow our speaker's presentation. And right now, we would like to open the floor to anybody that has a community announcement. We have a tradition of asking anyone that is running for office, anybody that's got something they'd like to share with the community about what's going on around us. Raise your hand, and the way we do that is whether you're using a phone or a pad or a computer, look for the little comments button. And the comments button will allow you to raise your hand. There's a little hand there that you can click. I think currently they call it React. Yes, they call it React. So you hit React, hit the raise hand button, and that will allow us to see that you have a comment. If you are running for office, if you've got a message that you want to put out there to the community, please Do that right now. I'm not seeing anybody that has a comment. Ordinarily, we've got folks that are telling us about events that are going on, other organizations, uh, that kind of thing. We've been very, very lucky this year to be able to work with the NAACP, to work with the League of Women Voters on our education, our action events about the election. So we've been very happy to promote them. One thing I would like to remind all of you, and if you don't have a piece of paper and a pencil handy, you might want to take it out. Here are a couple quick announcements that I think are worthwhile. The election this year is November 5th. Okay, so that's the last chance that you will have to vote. This is if you blow off everything else and screw it up and wait until the last thing. In my opinion, your plan is bad. But if you wait until the last minute and wait, our election is on November 5th. However, mail ballots, if you haven't gotten a mail ballot, you can still get one. Mail ballots are being sent out today from the supervisor of elections here in Brevard County. And so people will be receiving their mail ballots over the next couple of days. So if you were wise enough, and I mean that sincerely, if you're not voting by mail, I think you've made a terrible mistake. We encourage everyone to vote by mail. You're much more likely to have a smooth, positive experience with voting. If you want to vote by mail, the deadline to register to vote by mail, believe it or not, it's October 24th. The deadline to register, if you haven't even registered yet, you still have 4 days. It's October 7th. You can do this online. It's easy. You can make phone calls to get somebody to help you to register. They'll help you on the phone if you need it. You can go into the supervisor of elections office. I think there are 5 of them across Brevard County. Please register. If you're not registered, please vote by mail if you're not set up to vote by mail. Again, mail ballots are being sent out today. And then early voting will begin on Monday, October 21st, and that will continue through Saturday, November 2nd. Again, early voting Monday, October 21st, Saturday, November 2nd. Early voting's your second best chance or second best choice, and vote early, please. I can tell you that sometimes things happen in your life. Weather moves in. We have another tropical storm that comes through. Things that get in the way. Your car breaks down. Your kid gets sick. Things that get in the way, and then we lose your vote. It's very important that everybody participates. Anyways, that's I think the Space Coast Progressive Alliance's biggest pitch for this year is it's so important that you vote, and it's important that you vote wisely. One of the most important things that are going to be happening is, of course, supporting children. In other words, voting for our school board members, voting for elected officials that will support our schools and not fight them, people that do not support the book bans that we've been seeing, uh, people that will support public health in the event of another pandemic, another health uh, problem, people that support vaccination and other very wise and time-tested public health programs and support those for our children. These are the people that should be leading our community. And as I talk about people who've been leading our community, our speaker for tonight, if you missed my earlier introduction, is going to be Jennifer Jenkins. For many of us in this community, Jennifer has been a hero for the past 4 years. Jennifer, you might have even served longer than that, but I'll tell you what, just the 4 years that I'm thinking of recently have been such a stress for all of us, not just the pandemic, but organizations and people who have risen up. In my opinion, they're like rats that have come out of the little rat holes to attack our public schools and to attack those who have been leading our public schools, our administrators, our teachers, even people attacking other parents who are trying to protect their children, trying to educate their children, and to lead the defense of our children, to defeat the public schools. Jennifer Jenkins has been on the school board, taking incredible pressure, uh, so much anxiety and hatred directed at Jennifer, and she has stood her ground and proven to be a brave human being, one of the most courageous human beings that I have met. Every once in a while, we get really, really wonderful speakers, people that are guests, people that are here in our community who we all respect. Well, tonight we have one. Again, Jennifer Jenkins is the chair of Educated We Stand. It's a a nationwide nonpartisan organization dedicated to safeguarding education. She is also currently on the Brevard County School Board. And I'm going to hand the floor to Jennifer and let her take it away. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Phil, I think I'm going to have you introduce me everywhere I go because you're so nice to me.
It's an
I
honor.
also think I'm going to join you guys for the how to handle stress during politics session, the next one you got going on. I could have used that a long time ago. I appreciate being here tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about my next venture. You are correct. I have been serving 4 years, even though it feels like a lifetime. It certainly has aged me. I've lost a lot of hair and started growing gray hair in the past year. But I am finished in November. And so I'm moving on to a new chapter. A chapter that I'm really excited about. So I really appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to you guys about it. As I said, for the last 4 years, I have committed my life towards advocating for equitable and unbiased public education. I have witnessed extremist perspectives representative of just a minority of voices infiltrate our school board and bleed into our state legislative agendas. I have refused to be silenced by relentless harassment and intimidation campaigns, and I have fought tirelessly for my colleagues, my students, and the profession that I swore I was going to promote and protect. And the cost of doing my job has been high, but the cost of doing nothing would have been higher. After I defeated who would later become the co-founder of Moms for Liberty in my school board race in 2020, Brevard County became ground zero for a statewide trend of an ideological takeover of public education by far-right extremists. And unfortunately, it's no longer just in Brevard or even just in Florida. We're seeing this in all 50 states. So I felt compelled to organize the opposition and beat them again. Because make no mistake about it, the future of our public education, the future of our very democracy is on the ballot this November. And even if we have wins that I expect us to have in November, we need to commit, we must commit to never relenting again. So about a year ago, I had an incredibly fortunate opportunity to be asked to explore a run against Rick Scott for the United States Senate. And through that exploration journey, I met with leaders and organizations across Florida and DC, and almost every single meeting ended with, if this doesn't end up being your path, you need to organize against Moms for Liberty. And as flattering as that sounds, I was also deeply concerned because the reality was there's no one coming to save us. There's no white horse, no organized effort, and probably no funding to take this on. So the incredible team of people who guided me through that journey sat down with me, and we decided that now was the moment. That if what I truly cared about advocating for the most was public education, that this would be the path that I should be taking. And again, I beat them before, so we knew I could do it again. So just 4 months ago, I launched Educated We Stand, which is dedicated to safeguarding the integrity of public education and ensuring that our schools remain beacons of enlightenment and not battlegrounds of ideology. It's clear that the far right's assault on public education threatens our children's futures and the foundation of democracy. With Educated We Stand, we're not just going to fight back. We're going to defend the very essence of learning, curiosity, and inclusion in our schools. We're standing up for the future of unbiased education and the preservation of our democratic values, because every child deserves a safe space to learn, explore, and grow without the threat of political agendas clouding their education. And no school board member should ever be targeted or threatened for standing up for the basics, truths, and rights. Not by their governor, not by right-wing politicians, not by anyone. This isn't just about winning, though. It's about safeguarding the soul of American education for the generations to come. And for too long, advocates for public education have found themselves on the defense. But with Educated We Stand, we're going to go on the offense. We are developing researched and poll-tested state, regional, and national messaging to support pro-public education officials and community-resistant groups that are already functioning on the ground in their communities. And we're going to fund independent expenditure campaigns to protect and elect school board members across the state of Florida and other battleground states across the country. Because soon, Voters across the country are going to learn what we learned here in my race. When voters know who the candidates are that support extremist agendas, they lose. So in August, at just 3 months old, we were able to provide not just direct contributions to candidates, but programmatic support of texting, emailing, and mailing for 17 endorsed candidates across the state of Florida for school board. And we were in all different areas, not just safe spaces and safe seats. 5 of our candidates were on DeSantis's and Moms for Liberty's target list. 6 of our candidates ran against DeSantis endorsed opponents, and 6 of our candidates ran against Moms for Liberty endorsed opponents. The August election produced incredible results. 15 out of our 17 Educated We Stand endorsed candidates were successful, with 10 of them winning outright in the primary and 5 of them moving on to a November runoff. And to put that into perspective, Moms for Liberty endorsed 14 candidates in the state of Florida and only won 3. And DeSantis endorsed 23 candidates in the state of Florida and only won 6. And one of my proudest endorsements was in Ruby Red, Sarasota County, home to Don't Say Gay Unless It's a Three-Way Moms for Liberty co-founder Bridget Ziegler. Alongside these incredible candidates themselves, the insanely galvanized community that they live in, we were able to protect incumbent Tom Edwards and flip a seat held currently by the chair of the board to the incredible Liz Barker. And as we look forward to the November election, we will continue to support the candidates who moved on to their runoffs, as well as add additional candidates across the state of Florida. And we're looking forward to introducing ourselves to the great state of Michigan. But one initiative that I feel passionately about is messaging and advocating for the failure of Amendment 1. This November, voters face a pivotal decision with Amendment 1, which seeks to make school board elections partisan. And I strongly urge Floridians to vote no on this amendment. Local issues deserve local solutions, and school board elections should reflect the unique needs of the community. It shouldn't be hijacked by state or national partisan agenda. And a shift to partisan elections will inevitably steer the conversation away from what matters most, the well-being and the education of our children right here in our community. Instead of focusing on what's best for our students and teachers, our elections will continue to devolve into battles over broad political nonsense that have nothing to do and little to no bearing on our local schools. But most importantly, this amendment would disenfranchise a significant portion of voters. Florida's closed primary system already shuts out nearly a third of voters who are non-party affiliated. And these voters, many who are parents, educators, and active community members, deserve a voice in shaping the future of our schools. Amendment 1 would further marginalize them, restricting their participation until the November election and allowing political parties to dominate in the primaries. This silences a crucial part of our electorate, which is completely unacceptable. I founded Educated We Stand with the intention to fight the growing influence of extreme partisanship in our school board elections. And through our work, we found that the best candidates aren't driven by politics. They're educators, parents, and active community members dedicated to improving their schools. Increasing partisanship risks narrowing the field to candidates motivated solely by political ties, rather than to those who have expertise and passion that our schools desperately need. So far, there has been an outpouring of support for this organization in just 4 months. We have donations from all 50 states, and 45% of our donations are actually coming from outside the state of Florida. But we still need all of the support that we can get. Because in the dozens of conversations I've had with major organizations across the state, none have committed to messaging for Amendment 1. So you said that you need action items, so I have them for you today. But action number 1, if you are able to contribute or support Educated We Stand, we run solely on grassroots donations. So you can visit us at educatedwestand.com and you can help us defeat Moms for Liberty and Ron DeSantis again. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jennifer. I'll tell you what, the introduction of this topic is very, very important. People are looking at their uh, information that's flowing in on the mail as to how do we vote on these amendments that are coming in, and they're trying to decide. Geez, we've had several different meetings, different organizations coming in to present different ideas, and we've generally kind of come with the consensus. It's yes on 3 and 4, but pretty much no on everything else. And this idea of trying to make school board elections partisan clearly has an agenda. It has there's a reason for that. That's uh, thinly veiled. Would you like to talk about that? Who it is that who benefits when you have increased partisan wrangling in an election? Like we talk about judges. Should judges be elected or appointed? Should they be partisan? Should they be nonpartisan? What's your read on this issue of who's trying to make this a partisan business, a partisan battle at the school board?
So I have a couple of different perspectives on that. So first and foremost, obviously, this is the Republican Party of Florida that's trying to make this happen, right? They believe naively that this is a significant benefit for them. In many ways, it is. There's a lot of intentionally, gerrymandered districts out there. We're seeing them do that all across the state, even when it comes to school board. It happened right here in Brevard County, redistricting me out of my seat so that I would be placed in a very, very heavy red area instead of the almost kind of balanced seat that I was in previously. But the other part of it is they're always short-sighted, right? Because the reality is these school board seats across the state of Florida have already been held by a Republican majority for the past 20 years. 80% of our school board members are registered Republicans when I was elected in 2020, and over 85% of them have Republican majorities already. So it's kind of, again, it's that fake fear mongering that your school board candidates are hiding who they are and their values, and voters don't know who they are. I mean, it's not a true statement. Where they're short-sighted is that there are places and spaces that DeSantis has tried desperately to interject himself. An example being Broward, where he appointed 3 people to that school board that were extreme right, who lost miserably in their elections in August. We took down some of them, which I'm really proud of. But that puts them at a significant disadvantage over there, right? Where Democrats are highly outnumbering Republicans. They will probably never win a seat again there. So it's silly. But what's dangerous is, number one, it takes out a third of our voters, like I had said earlier, which is leading to more and more extreme will lead to more and more extreme candidates on the ballot when we come to November. Right? If the Republican Party continues to push to the extreme right, the likelihood of that Republican nominee being reflective of that party is likely. And if it's an area where the registration is significantly outbalanced, well, lo and behold, who's going to get elected. The other part that's scary is it allows for voters to be lazy. And I think that's kind of what they're hoping for, just to encourage people to go out and vote and vote, ours all down the line. And that's frustrating because we know that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best candidate. I'm a staunch Democrat, but, if I had to pick between 2 people and our Democratic candidate wasn't great, you may not see me clicking that button in the ballot box. It's just really frustrating when we have something so close to home, so specific to our children, something that really should be expert heavy, that we're willing to just play partisan politics with it. And I think that's ultimately the intention, is just for them to solidify the seats that they have right now, and make sure that they don't lose any ground.
It seems to me that, and in fact, we've been discussing this throughout the year, that for the past at least 50 years, there are people in our nation, probably more than 50, probably 100 years or longer, who just hate the idea of public education. They hate the idea that their tax money is going to educate somebody else in a way that they may not agree with. That the children should be raised, in a particular religion with a particular viewpoint, and if they think the world is flat, then the fact that children are being taught that the planet is an oblate spheroid with wrinkles and curves and mountains, and that's it's abhorrent to the. How can we possibly teach our children that? Have you been facing a rise in people who just generally hate public education? And it's not that they're particularly going issue by issue down the line. They just don't like the idea that um, that America's children are being taught by, wild liberal cabals who are communists and eat children for lunch or whatever crazy thing that they make up. Have you been facing that personally?
Don't get me wrong, those people exist in the world, but they're a significant minority. I always make the argument, especially here in Florida, as we have conversations about expanding vouchers. We've been one of the freest states when it comes to school choice for a very long time. It's not a new concept. It's now that we're just changing the way that we're funding that system. But 85% of families still chose their local community public schools because that's the choice that they made, because they love, trust, and respect their community schools. So I actually feel like most people really do support public education. Unfortunately, the majority of elected Republicans in the state of Florida, and now it seems to be a pattern across the United States, seem to have an issue with it. That's honestly where I see the pattern being. And again, I want to make that clear. It's the elected officials, because it's not just Democrats who are accessing our public schools here in Brevard County. It's Republicans and independents too. I really do believe that the majority of families love and respect the community schools, and are just starting to realize what's happening with their elected officials and the negative ramifications of them dismantling their public education system.
It's also very important, and this is going to be my last little bit here, I think, to ask. Maybe I have two things very quickly. One, but the issue of guns in schools, that there are people that really think that everybody in the world should have a gun on their hip at all times, and that schools should be no exception to that, and that teachers should be carrying guns, that every staff member should have a gun. And it frankly surprises me a little bit that there aren't, and there probably are people who want the children to have guns too. And I'm not talking about toy guns. I'm talking about real weapons. It strikes me that this kind of attitude, willingness to have many people armed in schools who shouldn't be, in my opinion, is growing. There's this strange inertia that whenever there's a school shooting, they want to put more guns in school. That it's like, folks, I don't think we understand why this is happening. Or anyway, you've been grappling with this one for years. What is your view, and where do you think this argument is headed?
So it's interesting because when I ran in 2019 and I'm knocking on doors, my opponent at the time was advocating to arm our teachers, not just our staff members. And our community had just gone through a lot of turmoil. So after Parkland, when the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act went into place, when we had hearing more and more conversations about potentially arming teachers, arming staff, Brevard County actually rose up in significant opposition to that after a very traumatic event, a time when if you believe that any community would be for it, that would be the time, right? Emotions are high. This is a very real threat just happened not too far from our own home, but the majority of residents stood up and said, this is not what we want our schools to look like. And so at the time, Sheriff Ivey and Tina Deskovich were, staunch supporters of putting guns in the hands of our teachers and staff members. And they had to back away from it because it wasn't working out very well. And so what they ended up doing was ensuring that we had an SRO in every school and or a school security specialist, which was somebody who was trained through the sheriff's department, but their primary and sole responsibility was only security on that campus. And that's where we've been for the past 3.5 years. But, I would knock on doors and no joke, the two things that I would be asked, well, the first one was, are you going to arm our teachers? And I knocked on everyone's door. I legitimately, when I first started, I didn't care. I went around my whole neighborhood. I just knocked on every single door. I didn't care what party you were. I promise you that was one of the most responsive questions I would get at the door. Are you going to arm our teachers? And I don't remember really any time where people told me it was a great idea and that they wanted it. And then when COVID happened, then, questions about mitigation in the schools happened too. But people were still fearful, even though it didn't pass. People were very well aware that our sheriff wanted it. And then clearly Tina Deskovich wanted it really badly as well. So it's weird because fast forward to today, and we now have put in place where our staff members can be armed on our campus, and they are volunteers. Sure, they go through the training of the sheriff, but the security of our schools is not their sole responsibility. And I have a problem with that. I believe if you are going to be armed on our campus at a bare minimum, your only responsibility should be for security. You should be doing nothing else. My fellow school board members have publicly argued that this is not guns in classrooms. These aren't teachers, but I know what kinds of staff members could be armed. Any of the ones who aren't classroom teachers are legitimately around children all day long. They're in and out of classrooms. They're in and out of hallways during class exchange. So that foolish argument that the guns aren't in our classrooms is probably the most frustrating statement I can ever hear. But even more frustrating than that was to listen to our sheriff justify this program to say that the fact that these people are anonymous and that families and potential criminals won't know who they are, that surprise element is what's going to deter crime and or take down the assailant faster. And my response to him, which of course he didn't like, was, well, then why are our officers wearing uniforms? You can't have it both ways. And not only are they wearing uniforms, Wayne Ivy upgraded their uniforms to tactical vests with giant long guns that fold in half across their chests just a year ago without telling our school board. So if the idea of being secret and hidden is safer for our children, well, he just did the exact opposite thing for his officers. So it's very, very frustrating. He also rattled off a list of statistics that were factually inaccurate and or intentionally misleading. Incidents in which teachers or school staff had stopped an assailant, but he forgets to leave out the part that they weren't armed. None of them were armed. It scares me. It definitely scares me. Unfortunately, I can't say the specifics about the program that concern me, but there are plenty because I'm not allowed to talk about specific security features. But there are plenty of things about this program that concern me even more than just those.
Well, I think it's time that we open the floor for questions. It's a very busy night. We got lots of people that are out there knocking on doors and campaigning right now. But we have a wonderful group of folks that are here with us tonight on this Zoom meeting, and I'm going to invite everyone. I encourage everyone that's here tonight to ask Jennifer a question. And you know what? Ordinarily we say, hey, questions only. But if there's anybody here that's got an observation or a good idea for the rest of the group, I think it's important that we all have this as an open discussion tonight, a chance to interact with Jennifer. And I know that we've already mentioned that an action item that tonight people should contribute to Educated We Stand. I think it's also very, very important that we have as an action item that people vote. You know what? If you don't have a plan yet to vote, tonight's the night to make a plan. And as I said, please vote by mail if you can. Vote early if you can't. Don't wait until the last possible day. Figure out, first of all, double check, make sure that you're registered to vote. Our as we've been discussing all year long, our Republican legislature took away everybody that was registered to vote by mail. That was all wiped out earlier in the year. And so if you haven't gone in to the Supervisor of Elections website to check out your status, please do it. Even if you're sure that you're registered, go in and double check, make sure that you're registered, make sure that you're registered to vote by mail, and verify that this is one of the biggest action items that we can ever ask our viewers and our members to do. Make sure that you vote make sure you vote educated. Our first question will be coming from Jan. Jan Moran, you have the floor.
Hi. It's really a great program. I'm wondering, how are you raising awareness of your program amongst the community? I mean, if it's nonpartisan, you have a lot of opportunities you wouldn't have if it was necessarily specific to one party versus the other. And I don't know if you're doing like a speakers bureau, but if you're going into Michigan too, how are you getting your word out?
That's a great question. So we are like, I think we just hit 4 months old. And so it's been tough, right? Because we have to balance operational costs, just setting up all of these things, and the legal and the compliance behind it. But then, you know, we also have to focus on making sure that we're giving the most amount of money we possibly can to these candidates. So it's leaving little room for me to go, you know, I don't have a social media person right now to help me expand that way, to expand outreach. But what we've been doing is networking with other organizations that have worked in the space of public education before, and other large organizations that are now playing in school board races. So one example would be Run for Something. Run for Something helps support candidates under 40 years old. They never played in school board races until this year. And so they're somebody that we communicate with a couple of times actually before we come up with a slate of candidates, to ensure that we're kind of on the same page. Same thing with organizations like Ruth's List, with the unions in the states that they're in, having conversations with sitting school board members in that area. And almost every place that we've played, there's community resistant groups on the ground countering this extremism in their public schools. And so we're usually having a conversation with them too. So that's kind of happening through word of mouth. In terms of fundraising awareness, I do have a fundraiser that I hired. And so we have email campaign going out, text message campaign going out, and that kind of just naturally builds upon itself. And we've been doing really, really well. I mean, I think I have like 5,500 donors already from just being around for 4 months with really not having too much awareness. Trying to break through to the media in any place and space they'll take me. Right now, it's really, really tough, obviously, because of the election. But I feel really confident post-November that we're going to kind of break through that space a lot easier. But we've been able to get on CNN, MSNBC. I actually had a really good hit on Fox News a couple of weeks ago. They didn't like that. They didn't want me back. I've been on a lot of Sirius XM radio shows, and people are hearing it and seeing it because I will get letters. I'll get emails and things of that nature and telling me that they're doing that. But big picture going forward, I would love to be able to add to our team someone to help with outreach on social media, just so we can get a little bit more traction in that area. My primary focus is really to exist to benefit these candidates. So I believe in a healthy balance of, you know, notoriety and attention, because that helps garner more fundraising and support. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want to be a Moms for Liberty either, right? I don't necessarily want to claim that I have 500 chapters across the United States of America. That's not my goal. My goal isn't to start ballooning different little organizations across states. My goal is to work with those that already exist and give resources to those places. So it is absolutely a concern and it's a goal, but we feel really good about it. I'm super open and transparent, probably more than I should be, but we haven't had a negative interaction yet. I've been in very big places and spaces that I should not be in yet. And they haven't committed or anything yet, but they are very, very positive, and they continue the conversation and they continue to introduce us to other people in this place. So I feel really good about it. I think big things are going to come around January.
I am so hoping that you're right. Our next questioner is Daniel McDowell, a great friend, former board member of the SCPA, former congressional candidate. He is on the board of the city of West Melbourne. Daniel, it is wonderful to see you, my friend. You have the floor.
Great. Thank you, Phil. Hey, Jennifer, and congratulations on your new endeavor here. Hey, I went out on the website to kind of get a feel for what you're about, and my apologies for not being ahead of that. I should have done that a while ago when it first came out. But
You're a
you
little
did
busy,
use,
buddy.
okay, you were using the term blunt some of these initiatives, and it kind of triggered because I know you, and you're not about sitting around waiting to respond. Or react to something. You're pretty progressive. And what I was, and I may have missed it on your website. Do you have a criteria or focus? Was there guns or book banning, reading scores, or LGBTQ issues, or how are you going about that? Do you rely on a resource of people to help you decide what's important? Are they equally weighted? And I'm just wondering how, I mean, this is a major undertaking, as I don't have to tell you that, but I'm just curious how you're managing all these moving parts. Thank you.
Yeah, and actually, before I answer your question, there was a part of Janice's question that I didn't answer. Just to give you some awareness to this is nonpartisan. Actually, we did support independent candidates, and I offered to support to some Republicans in Florida that were being attacked by DeSantis. Just strategically, they said, "I appreciate you, but no." So we're open to helping everybody. We're not boxing ourselves just into a progressive space. But yeah, Dan, it is not simple, right? It's just constant. And it's really down to where we're playing. I really have, and my team, not just me. I mean, we really legitimately are having conversations at the community level of what's going on in your school board, what's a priority for you guys, what's happening here, and targeting that. I mean, even in Florida, it was drastically different from community to community, what was a major concern and happening. So that's our focus. When we are able to pool resources for messaging, it's going to have to be specific to where we're playing. So depending on the candidates that we are targeting in that time, is it better off that we do something regional? Is there like a more broad topic that's kind of touching every space? Or is this a really hotly contested seat, like for instance in Sarasota? We didn't do any polling there, but that is a seat that if I had the money and the resources, I would have done polling for, because it would have been really, really advantageous for us to know what actually would move the needle on a voter who wouldn't traditionally vote for someone who's a registered Democrat. So yeah, it's hyper specific. We are definitely working with organizations like Equality Florida, right? My job is not to reinvent the wheel. And so creating really strong partnerships with people who are already doing this work and in those spaces, that's the best that I can do.
Great. Thank you. So it's not necessarily cookie cutter, and it's
No.
weighted based on the community's needs. Thank you.
Yep.
That's a great question. Thank you so much, Daniel. One of the things we were talking about before our event started tonight was that Jennifer is deeply engaged in the educational community. Not only is she a school board member, but she's a mom and a teacher. She's got experience and she has knowledge and she has drive. She is somebody that if you're thinking about getting involved in an organization, you're thinking about contributing to an organization, you know what? Educated We Stand is something you probably ought to think about. It's something that is, you know, uh, as I said, you're planting seeds for the future. When you're helping children to learn, you're helping children to be safe in schools. This is the future of our country. It's the future of our species. We literally can wipe ourselves out if we have people that are poorly educated. The least among us need the most help. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth of pitch for Jennifer. It looks like
You're saying this as my child is screaming songs in the shower behind me, and my husband finally just closed the door. So I apologize. I keep putting myself on mute.
Having children in the house is a gift as well as a responsibility. Anyway, Jan has another question. By the way, I'm going to encourage everybody, please, and I'm asking all of you to please contribute to this conversation because it makes it a lot better when we have people that are willing to throw in their 2 cents worth. I'm sure that many of you have got some questions that have been wondering about what the heck is going on. Oh, hey, you know what? If I might throw up another idea for an action item, and Jennifer, you let me know, and that is for everyone to go to a school board meeting. whether you have children or not, whether you're married to a teacher or not, go to a school board meeting and go to a couple of them. And you find that it's a really neat experience. It's interesting. It's fun to watch. Every school board meeting begins with some kind of a community children doing some kind of an event or recognition for our outstanding kids, recognition for outstanding teachers, the placement of principals, that kind of stuff. This is all going on at school board meetings. Very, very important. What would you say, Jennifer? You want to invite people to come to school board meetings?
Yeah, and actually my last night school board meeting, because we only have one a month at night now, is Tuesday, October 8th at 5:30. And then my final one will be in the morning on October 22nd at 9:30 in the morning.
The year is winding down. And of course, the election is coming up, and I'm going to just repeat a couple of numbers for everybody. I know we have some new folks that have joined us. By the way, those of you that are on the Zoom call, take a look at the chat. Nellie has entered some data for everybody that you can look through and see. One thing that I was looking at, it's something that Nellie posted, and I think it actually is and somebody else on this meeting may be able to correct me, but it says mail-in ballots require 2 forever stamps. I actually don't think you actually even have to put a stamp on a ballot that goes in. I believe, seems to me that the Postal Service has committed that it will deliver every mail-in ballot, whether it's stamped or not. Personally, I always put a stamp on, but I believe that you don't really actually have to have a stamp on a mail-in ballot. It's your vote, so it's kind of important, and so I kind of want to make sure that it gets there. Somebody else may have input on what the current status is. The United States Postal Service has a position on this, but I'm going to remind everybody, November 5th is our election date, and if you wait till the last minute to vote, shame on you. I will say that to anybody. You've made a bad plan if you're going to wait until the very last possible day, the very last possible minute to run in and vote. The most important thing you can do is to vote by mail. Vote by mail. Mail-in ballots here in Brevard County were sent out today, October 3rd. They'll be receiving, people will be receiving them over the next couple of days. But you can still register to vote by mail. The deadline for that is October 24th. So you've got quite a bit of time. However, if you aren't registered to vote at all, you've only got until October 7th. The 7th is the deadline to register to vote here in Brevard County. And then early voting, which takes place at various locations around the county, begins. Early voting begins October 21st and goes through Saturday, November 2nd. So please have a plan. The best plan is to vote by mail. The next best plan is to vote early. And your last possible choice is November 5th. We beg all of you to have a plan, execute your plan. Please vote by mail. If you can't vote by mail, vote early. Jan, you have the floor. Jan's got her
Yes.
hand up again.
I do.
Go
I
ahead.
do. I can think of any number of questions, but are you also addressing the book banning issues that are touching the Florida school system? I mean, is that part of your efforts in your program as well?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have anything planned specifically in terms of like messaging or mailers or anything like that for this election. Again, it's specific to the candidate, but I'm not shying away from it when I'm doing media hits and things of that nature. I mean, obviously, Florida is unfortunately leading in the nation when it comes to that. So it's absolutely a conversation we're having. And quite frankly, I think almost every single interview I do, it just naturally comes up. Just because it's a hot topic, and it appears that no voter is really excited about that except for the extreme right. And so it's definitely a topic that is on the top of everybody's mind.
Here in Brevard County, I know that this has been a battle that's been going on now for a couple of years anyway. This issue of parents flagging particular books, what the procedure is. We've changed our procedure from many years. We have always had a procedure for our school board where if a parent had an issue with the book, they could raise it with the school system. Our media specialists could weigh in, teachers could weigh in. And now the system has been, I think it's been modified a couple of times that I'm aware of, at least, and What is the current status right now? If some parent says, "Hey, I hate Harry Potter. I think it's evil. We need to take Harry Potter books off the shelves," and they run to I guess you fill out a form online and say, "I think they're awful." And what happens? What is the current status on our book? I forget what the correct thing. Objections to books in the school system here in Brevard.
Yeah, so it's actually even simpler than that. You can do anything. You could say it to your teacher in person. You can say it to the front desk. You can call, you can email. There's no rule. You don't have to fill out a form to say, I don't want my child to have access to X, Y, and Z. And quite frankly, it's not even just for books in the library, it's even for your curriculum. And it's always been that way. That's nothing new. That's the most frustrating part about this as well, because I asked how many restrictions to media access do we have in Brevard County? And the answer was zero, little to none, basically. Like that doesn't really exist. It's called a limited use form, but again, you don't have to fill out the form. And we don't have them. So that tells me that, the people like the Monster Lady members who came and submitted challenge forms and objections and read from the podium to get books banned, they obviously don't care very much because they would have filled out those forms for their children, right? They want to use those parental rights that they have. It's very, very frustrating. It is silly. It is fear-mongering. It is a distraction. It is quite frankly a waste of time and money. It is an air sucker. So right now where it stands is Brevard County always had a policy for challenging books in order to make sure that they're okay for all students. But it's gotten more ridiculous. And so someone can challenge a book and it goes to our book review committee at some point. It takes forever. It's not a fast process, of course. We had 5 appointees. Each member of the board was able to appoint someone to this committee. We used to have experts also joining them on this committee, like teachers, psychologists, media specialists. But my fellow school board members believe that that was a conflict of interest, which is interesting. Quite frankly, it was a waste of time. That book review committee would review books, and there were different answers for every book. This book should stay. This book should be moved to high school only. This book should be banned, things of that nature. And almost every single time the school board went against the will of their committee members and removed books that weren't even suggested to be removed. So there's no validity to the system. They used to have a vote, then their vote got taken away and the board has the final say. I can tell you Mr. Susan had 2 committee members resign and they both wrote interesting emails in their resignations. Those are public record. You should ask them. They're fun. But basically, when you ask someone to commit so much time to their community and then you completely disregard their opinion, they're not going to help you any longer. So that's why they left. Mr. Trent had somebody on the committee who had personally challenged books. And then she moved out of state. And so then he put another person on the committee who had personally challenged books. And she's too busy running for county commission. So she never showed up to any of the recent book review committees, which limited the amount of people who were voting. And then now the 2 of them have officially resigned from the book review committee, and now it has been officially paused, which is just absolutely ridiculous. And I've said publicly at our school board meetings, just to dismantle the committee, quite frankly, because we're wasting community residents' time, we're wasting staff members' time who oversee this process. I mean, it's hours and hours of work. It's just ridiculous. We also had a moment where Mr. Trent was handed a list from said person who's running for county commission of 300 books that have already been banned in the state of Florida that the Florida Department of Education had posted. And he out of nowhere asked to ban all of those books in a school board meeting in one sweep. somehow Megan Wright had the conscience at the time to say that's crazy, we have a process in place, we shouldn't be doing that. So there was 3 of us who went against that process. I don't feel confident that won't happen again after November.
Again, we are so proud of your good judgment. We really thank you for that. I see Carol's got her hand up. Carol Becker, you have the floor.
Okay, this is kind of on a different subject. You were talking about mail-in voting, and I was just going to tell people what I do because I get a mail-in ballot always, but I worry that I could have a family member in a different state, have issues, die, whatever. I'd have to go to a funeral. I'd be in the hospital or whatever. So I get the mail-in ballot early. And have it early, fill it out. And then sometimes I will go to early voting and take my ballot with me and take a picture of it with my cell phone and then turn the ballot in at the early voting site and then go and actually vote. And then I always check at the website to make sure my vote was counted. Well, that's all I wanted to say.
No, that's great, Carol. There are many people that have different plans, different ways they like to execute it. You could take your ballot to the local supervisor of elections office, and they have a box that you can deposit the ballot into right there at the supervisor of elections. That's probably I talk to a lot of people, and that's their modus operandi. They like to make sure that they put it in the box at the SOE. And then again, this is a reminder to everyone. You can check your status at the Supervisor of Elections website, www.votebrevard.gov. And you can look to see what your status is. You can see when they've sent you a ballot. You can see when your ballot has been received, when you turn it back in. And then you can see when it's counted. And so those are steps that, frankly, everybody should be doing. Monitor your ballot once it's on its way. Make sure that's received. Make sure that it gets counted. And if you have an issue, make sure that you call the supervisor of elections, and you can, you could find out what's going on. Why is my ballot not in? And if my ballot's not in, you could go in and vote again. It's called a provisional ballot. In other words, if your ballot is somewhere in the mail but it wouldn't have gotten turned in, they'll make sure you don't vote twice. There are procedures in place so that the supervisor of elections can make sure that your vote is counted. So have a plan. Execute that plan. Do it early. I see Nellie Cardinal's got some notes here in the chat area. It says only 12 states have prepaid stamp ballots. Florida is not on the list, and that is true. In Florida, there's a little box that says place a stamp here, and I always do that. But there are people that will just throw it in the mail, and they do get to the supervisor of elections office. They don't get returned to you, but anyway, it's really, really important to have a plan, execute your plan, vote early. Don't put it off until the last damn day. Please, everybody. Thank you, Carol. Thank you so much for all that you do. Do you have any questions, by the way, for Jennifer while you're here, while you got the floor?
No, I'm just listening intently. I first met Jennifer when I didn't meet her, but I first heard of her when I worked for the child protection team and dealt with the bogus call in about her daughter. It was really stupid.
Well, I'll tell you what, that actually would probably be an interesting story. And Jennifer, I don't know how much you want to talk about the fact that it's an outrage. It is an absolute damned outrage how much hatred and how much pressure you and your family, not just you, but your entire family has had to endure because you're a good civic-minded human being who has stepped up courageously. Again, I don't want to ask you to reveal anything to make you to embarrass you or to put you in a tough place, but I think an awful lot of people don't know the stuff that's happened to you. You could write a book about being threatened as a public service person.
I may.
would you be interested in telling us some stories, or would you rather not?
Yeah, I'm always open and willing to have that conversation because quite frankly, most people don't really know or understand what happened because I've only been able to talk about some of it. There's only been, certain things that have been in the media or publicized, but I'm always willing to talk about it. It was one of the most traumatic things I've ever been through in my entire life. I have self-diagnosed myself with PTSD. It is wild sometimes when like something will hit me and I'm like, oh my God, I forgot about that. Because there was so much. It never ended. There was a point where I literally cried every single day, probably for a year straight. I threatened to quit multiple times a week. It was pretty awful. But most people only know about things like the protests, things like seeing pictures of the vandalism, hearing about the DCF claim, but they don't really understand or know the ins and outs of all of it. So I can speak about the DCF claim. Luckily, I had gone to the police station that morning to speak to an officer and then eventually a detective about the vandalism of my property that morning, because that afternoon I had just dropped my daughter off at a play date. And it was a brother of someone my husband was really very, very close with his whole life as a child. And they were in kindergarten class together. And so they asked to have a play date. And so I dropped her off. So we knew them obviously well enough to leave my kid there, but I didn't know them well enough to go through the experience I went through. And so just as I had dropped her off, I got a call from the detective asking me if I was home, telling me that DCF was at the police station, asking for them to escort them to my home. And they had updated the investigator about what was going on, but they still have to take it seriously. And so, yeah, I found myself sitting at my kitchen table answering questions about how I treat my daughter, how I discipline my daughter, showing them around my house. And then I had to drive them to her play date. And they had to look underneath her clothes and see if I was hurting her and abusing her. And I had to wait a couple of days until they could officially close it out. Not that I wasn't like actually concerned or anything, but it still weighs on you, right? It's a weird feeling. This is in the middle of the worst when Randy Fine was a psychopath and would lie profusely on his social media that had a lot of following. And so I was waiting any minute for him to say I'm a child abuser. I mean, he did call me that all the time, but I was waiting for him to say DCF was at her house. They said that I was pulling her out in the front yard, that I was beating her, that I was burning her with cigarettes, and that I was selling drugs out of my home. Just crazy, crazy stuff. I have a feeling I know who did it. And it's really frustrating for me because I don't think it's rocket science to figure it out. And I have a lot of resentment for that. And I'm not going to relent ever. That is the one thing I probably will not move on from until that person is held accountable. There's a crazy story to that, and not to get into the weeds, but I think it's important because when you speak to the insanity and the trauma, like this one story really just kind of like ties it all together. That morning before I knew about the DCF call, it was the day after the protesters were at my house, I got an email from someone I didn't know. I'm not going to say their name. And they said that they were in this group, which was called Recall Jennifer Jenkins, which was started by 2 Moms for Liberty members and 1 member of the public. And that they were in there and that they were saying they were going to come back to my house that night. And so they were warning me and they said, I was kicked out of this group for defending you. And I said, what group? And they sent me the picture of the group. And then, I thought nothing of it. And the only reason I even asked that follow-up question was because at that time, district security was telling me, you need to document things for harassment. So just make sure you keep documentation. And so when the officer came with the investigator, they said a name. And it kind of stood out to me, but I wasn't thinking. And then the next day it hit me. That was the name that had emailed me. It was obviously not that person who made the claim. They verified that. And so whoever did it came from that group. They can't prove who did it, but we know that much. It came from that group. So I have 3 people in my mind that I feel very confident had participated in that. And I'll make sure that they're held accountable one day. Other than that, though, the crazy things that I've never gotten to talk about, I have talked about this, but not to great extent. So I was followed by 2 private investigators. One of them was really bad at his job. He was digging through the trash can after I left a gas station. I had thrown something in the trash. And it happened to be a complaint that I sent to FDLE about Randy Fine. It was in my car, like my side door, for like months. And just like I do with everything else, I'm at a gas station and I chucked it in the trash. And what's funny is I specifically remember the trash being empty because I heard it hit the bottom. And there was like this little thing in my stomach where I was like, maybe I should have shredded that. But I'm like, whatever. It's public record. Like, who cares? And so I got a call the next day from a quote unquote concerned citizen who found it on top of the trash can and asked me about it, and it's just nonsense. And I called the phone number back and it said private investigator. They're not very good at their job, clearly. But that man was clearly hired by Randy Fine. I feel comfortable saying that publicly. I don't care. And, Randy Fine made a website about me saying I'm having an affair. He disseminated that hundreds of times. He said he had evidence for years and years and years. He doesn't have any evidence because he's a liar. And that was really traumatic for me and my family, even though nobody believed it. I mean, it wears on you. It wears on you when you go to work and people talk about that kind of stuff. So,
By the way,
I
it looks like you have a question coming in from your left shoulder, and if you need
Sure.
to take that, that's okay right now. Go ahead.
Okay, hold on.
You want to go to mute? There we go. Well, I'll tell you what, while she's taking her private question, we would certainly love to have more people involved in this conversation. I see Terry and Debbie, you've been holding your hands up patiently. Thank you very much for
Yeah, I
that.
apologize. I'm done. No more ranting.
Okay, no problem. And I didn't mean to interrupt your story,
No,
but
no, no, no. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
I think people do need to know. I don't think that honestly the media has done a good enough job at covering the hell that you and your family have been through. And to be honest with you, I think this is a warning and it's an outrage that every citizen should know. The people like, we're familiar with like Ruby Freeman, who was a poll worker in Atlanta when she was attacked by then President Trump for they made up stories about her surreptitiously being affecting the campaign when she and her daughter and frankly every other stinking poll worker in this country works very hard. They dedicate themselves during the election cycle to a lot of extra work and time to make our democracy work. And what's it like to be attacked by an elected official, not just some dud on the street, but elected officials that go out of their way to lie about you, to take action? I mean, hiring a private investigator to have probably to organize protesters in front of your house. They burn something into your lawn. I mean, this is terrifying. This harkens back to the Jim Crow era, the worst of the Jim Crow era, when if somebody who might have objected to racists government action or something would be attacked at night by the Ku Klux Klan. This is very much what we're facing today, and you were right in the target.
It's crazy that you say that because I literally just went to an event in Sarasota this past weekend, and I had the pleasure of sitting beside an African-American history historian, and she didn't know my story, and I shared my story, and that came right out of her mouth. And she said, this isn't a new playbook. You're just a different target. Before I move on though, because I don't ever get to talk about the in the weeds thing, I do want to share 2 other crazy, insane things that happened because I never get to talk about these things. So one other thing that they did to me was not just that DCF thing with my daughter. There's that neighborhood app, Nextdoor. And someone in the community who I also suspect is the person who, burned FU in my yard and chopped down my trees and plants and stuff. They would post when my husband and my daughter were at certain people's houses in the community, which is psychotic. Actually, somebody just randomly brought that up recently on my Facebook page too. Like, your husband was at a party when you had COVID. And I'm like, that's not true, but also that's incredibly psychotic. And the other thing too, I have received death threats via email and One of the ones was sent to both Robert Burns and I. And it says, you said something like, we know where you live and you have daughters. That's disgusting. And that afternoon is when Robert Burns was attacked in the park. And there was no press about it, except Randy Fine mocking the photos he should have never had access to of him being in the hospital. So these threats were real and legitimate. And again, it was never highlighted, which is crazy. And that was the first time I really ever worried about what was happening to me. And when district security told me to duck behind the dais if people were to shoot because it's bulletproof, that's kind of a crazy thing to hear when you're on a school board.
Heaven help us all.
Yeah.
I thank you again. I really, and I don't mean to embarrass you or put you in a tough position.
No, I'm super open about it.
People, thank you again. Thank you for your courage. When people hear me say that, thank you and your family. It makes me want to cry. Anyway, thank you, buddy. Thank you so much for that. We have a question. Terry's been sitting here with her hand up.
Sorry,
Terry,
Terry.
you have the floor.
Luckily, it's a fake hand.
Actually, I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank you, Jennifer. I wanted to thank you for your service. I wanted to thank you for standing your ground. I, have kind of watched from a distance and, have been horrified and very, very proud of you for hanging in there through these horror stories that I just can't quite wrap my head around how sick the far right is and the lengths that they'll go to, if you shouldn't have to do that kind of things if you're bringing common sense to the people. So anyway, I really appreciate you trying to bring some balance to the school board. And for sticking out this fight and for continuing to lead the fight to protect our schools and our children. And it means a lot to me to have someone like you out there working for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
I tell you what, people in our community are standing by you. I think it's important for you to know as you go to bed at night that you are not alone. You and your family are loved and respected, and we honor you. This is a chance
Thank you.
to say it to you. Everybody here feels very strongly about that. That's why we're here, I think. Debbie, you have the floor.
Thank you. I thank you, Jennifer, for all that you have done, especially for the book banning issue, constantly bringing it to the forefront. I am a retired professional librarian of 40 years, and it is near and dear to my heart, and it's not new. It's being pushed to the forefront once again by Moms for Liberty is in our profession in the information literacy and information resources is again scary for a lot of professionals. And I know media specialists. I've worked in Brevard County as a library professional for my entire career. And I know a lot of librarians, media specialists, public librarians, academic librarians who, because of this issue, do not, they are fearful for their jobs. And in some cases in other states, and I'm sure you read about the librarian in Louisiana who was, received death threats because she stood up to the challenges. What do you see as, you sit in the board meetings. I've listened to the book committee, review committee meetings. It's very discouraging. But what do you see? What is your suggestion? I realize it's broken in Brevard County, how they handle it. What do you see as a suggestion for how you feel it should best be handled?
I think what we had in place already was just fine. I mean, what could be more parental right friendly than saying no questions asked, no rules or regulations on how you restrict what your child consumes. Just tell us. Send me a post-it. Send me a text, send me an email, whisper. I think it was totally fine the way it was. I think we are fixing a system that wasn't broken. And it's, again, it's intentional. It's just to control what people are consuming. It's to distract from what's going on, because let's not forget, like, this started a long time ago. What, 2 years ago we started with the book banning nonsense here. And there were many other things that the state was doing in the area of public education that were egregious and outrageous, but it really wasn't getting the attention that it needed because we were focusing on book banning. Not that book banning didn't deserve the attention, but it was eating all of the space. Right around that same time is when, all of a sudden slavery was a benefit to enslaved people. Right around that time is when we got rid of AP psychology, AP African American history, and so I don't see anything positive happening anytime soon to revert what's happening. But I believe that the solution was exactly where we were. I do think we'll get there one day. What's concerning, though, is like Brevard County's policy right now is when a book gets removed after being challenged, it cannot be put back on the shelves for 8 years. And not that this has happened very often, so I might be misspeaking here, but I don't think that I am. Typically, even if policies change, you revert back to what the policy was when that action was taken. So I'm not really sure if putting a new policy in place one day would then undo the policy that existed. I mean, technically, if that school board is all in favor of it, I guess they technically could just say, whatever, like, we'll break our own policies. But it is deeply concerning to me. If we had a non-broken book review committee, quite frankly, I would have encouraged people to challenge books that you want to stay in the library, because that's the opposite effect. If it's challenged and it's deemed okay, you can't challenge it again for 8 years. So I would have played a little bit of a mind game with them there. But unfortunately, I have a feeling they're never going to reenact that book committee again. And I mean, granted, I personally have said it shouldn't exist anyway because they don't abide by it. But I think they're going to intentionally just not even have it. So that way there's none of that public controversy that they're going against the book.
So if my question is to tag on to that. So if a book is challenged and there's no real procedure, as what I understood you to say, there's no real procedure as to how to challenge a book.
No, there is absolutely a procedure of how to challenge. It is so complex.
I mean, but there is a
but
form.
It's easy. Yeah.
There's a form that has to be filled out, correct?
Yep. Yep.
And so all decisions are going to be made at the school board level as to whether that book will be allowed in the library or the school library or not allowed in the school library.
If it gets to the level of being a formal challenge. So not every book that's challenged goes directly to a formal challenge. If there's no question at all, and the district staff that has been appointed that day or media specialists make a decision, it doesn't go to the formal challenge. Now, I will say that doesn't happen very often anymore, right? Because they loosen the laws, they make it more scary, they freak people out to do their jobs. And so, if there's a word in there that someone is like, I think that this is under the wrong language, then it immediately makes it to a formal.
Well, I'm gonna leave it at that, but I will say when my children were in elementary school was when Harry Potter was first published, and it was challenged and it was placed behind the counter. However, down my street, when the new volume came out, the UPS driver had to stop at every house to deliver the book to the kids. So, I questioned the media specialist. I said, where are the Harry Potter books? She says, oh, we have to keep them behind the counter. I said, you're kidding me. And she says, no. So if that was legitimately challenged, and if it was an 8-year ban, then that book would not have been allowed to be back on the shelf in that media center again for another 8 years.
Yep.
That's a whole generation
Yep. And what's
of
crazy,
readers.
yeah, what's crazy, that's exactly what my oh my God, when they, and that number is arbitrary. Like they just like pulled that out of a hat when we were debating the amount of years. But that's exactly what I thought. It's like,
Mhm.
you guys realize like these kids are going to be out of school at that. It's just, it's mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
It's absolutely mind blowing
So
to
it
me.
really is up to the parent in the home to make the decision what is acceptable for their child. That's the way I see it.
And even though it won't change overnight, and you are never going to change the minds of the people that I sit beside, it still matters to be vocal, to push back, to fight back for many, many reasons. Because at some point when the tides start to change, they need to know that that community still doesn't agree with what they're doing. And also, anytime the media writes about it, they get away with their nonsense that everyone's okay with this when the media can't actually say there were people in this room resisting what's going on. And that's one of the things that I'm so proud about over the past 4 years of serving this county is I am a singular voice who can't do anything by myself. And when I think of accomplishments, no, there are no things that I passed because that would never happen with the people that I sit beside. I am so damn proud of this community coming together and week after week being in that boardroom and consistently showing up and being a resistant voice to the point where the majority of people sitting in that audience consistently are anti what's going on way more than the other sides. Most of the time, they're not even there anymore. And it's really, really important. And also the people who are sitting there are diverse now and diversely sitting together. Different groups of people are supporting one another. And so that is the most important thing that we can do as a community, even though it is exhausting and it is depressing sometimes to sit there and say things and feel like no one's listening to you. But man, it absolutely matters. It absolutely matters in the long run.
I want to take a second to say thank you, Debbie. Our librarians, our media specialists are real heroes too. You know, teachers do work, but the librarians and the media specialists manage the tools that teachers use. They manage the ideas that are on the shelf, that are in the minds of young people, the tools that kids use to think rationally, to think for themselves, to question the world, to challenge ideas, to learn new ideas. These are gifts that every librarian offers to our humanity, to our species. We owe you so much. And so I want to thank you for that. This is my wife and I were introduced in high school by a librarian, so I'm forever indebted to her. But the essence is the being able to fight the fight to for ideas. You know, again, this what's old is new again. People have been trying to burn books for as long as people have been printing books. Let us all remember that, of course, and the concept of struggling over who gets to have what ideas and what's fair but wow, this struggle to think that it's happening, these kinds of things in 2024, mind bending to imagine that a book could be pulled, Harry Potter could be pulled off the shelf for 8 years. It's like, this is insanity. What the hell? Sorry, Jan, you have your hand up. We're all sitting here shaking our heads. Jan, you have the floor.
Yeah, you said that you're going into Michigan for your program as well. What kind of book banning issues do they have there? Are they in the same boat as Florida?
Yeah, they are. Woo! It's again depressing to have conversations with people all over this country and hear the same stories or hear the stories that were happening here 6 months ago. Yeah, it's nothing different. It's just as crazy. But they're behind us. The one district that I've been talking to the most, it's just out of a suburb outside of Detroit, not very far. I mean, I'm not even kidding you. Like the story that they told me, I'm like, this is my story. Like you're just 2 years behind, which is scary. The one positive though is like, I feel really good that like if we get in there, like we can stop that nonsense from continuing to end up where we are now. But yeah, unfortunately, it's all the same nonsense everywhere. This is super random, but I feel like this is the appropriate place to say this. So I had the pleasure of being part of a documentary filming about a year ago. And it was following these 3 student activists in South Carolina. It was one of the first counties to start banning books alongside of Brevard County. And they came here. They actually, Adam Tritt is in it as well. My book review committee member, Paul Raub, is in it. I actually didn't know they were in it until I went to go see the screening. It is a fantastic documentary that they are doing pre-screenings right now for, trying to pitch to Netflix and different companies. And they've asked me to figure out a way to potentially host it here. And quite frankly, if I'm being honest, I have dropped the ball on that one. But if Space Coast Progressive Alliance wants to maybe have a conversation outside of here, to maybe see if we want to be a part of that, coming together with maybe some other groups here in Brevard County to host it. It's a free screening. They appreciate if we figure out a way to pay for the screening fee to rent the space. But it is really, really incredible. And I think it would be really powerful for our community to see it. Because there is a positive vibe at the end. It's all not doom and gloom. So just throwing that out there.
I think that's fantastic, and you're actually happen to be speaking to some of the right people that are in this meeting they're listening to you. Do you know what the name of the documentary is?
Yeah, it's called Band Together.
Band and BANS together.
BANNED band.
Oh, that's good. Band.
Yeah, it's good.
Together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is something
They've got
I'm
Jody
sure
Picoult and Jamie Raskins. I mean, it is so, and those kids, man, whew, it's really, really good. It's really good.
I am sure that we're going to be having a conversation with you on that. That sounds great.
Good.
By the way, I noticed that we've got again some new folks that have joined us. This is the Space Coast Progressive Alliance Educated We Stand first Thursday event for October. If you have any questions that you would like to ask of our star speaker, Jennifer Jenkins, please raise your hand. You can use here in the Zoom functionality, look for the react button. You can raise your hand. You just push a little button and it raises the hand. We can then call on you. I noticed that we have a couple of candidates, Anthony and Beth Yance. I know that you are here. I don't know if you guys would like to have a moment to make a 1-minute announcement. Got a lot of old friends here that are being quiet, but I'm sure that everybody's got a question. And Jennifer, I don't know how much more time you want to give to us. We can offer the floor to anybody else that might want to ask a question, or we can pull the plug and say goodnight. Did you have a few more minutes?
Yeah.
So if there's anybody that's got a question or a comment, something they would like to say to Jennifer Jenkins, this is your chance. Speak now or forever hold your peace, I guess, is the old
Hey, I'm not dying, Phil. And I'm not getting married again.
It's such an honor and a privilege to have you here. You're a very busy person, and to be able to have you as a speaker, and just to have you serving us, it's just such a pleasure. Debbie's got her hand up. Debbie, you can have the floor again.
It's really interesting about this documentary. I'm also the president of the Library Association of Brevard. And I think that group, it's again, there's some concern amongst the membership about being too out there, because they are all, many of them are employed librarians in the area, but we would, as far as I'm concerned, our organization would certainly be ready to watch it.
Yeah. Let's
or work on getting it out there, or whatever help you need.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my personal email in this chat. And then if anyone send me an email, and then I'll try to do like a organization so we can come together. I think it'd be really cool, and find a space to do it. I think it'd be really, really powerful for our county to see, yeah, we went through hell, but people are paying attention, and that's important.
Jennifer, this is fantastic, and I'll tell you what. One of the things you might want to do, I don't know if there's a way to have. Is there a way to watch this online, or is it not
No.
available yet?
Yeah, so that's the difficult. This is, if I'm being honest, this is why when they first asked me, I was like, oh, I don't know how to do this, because they were like, you can't tell anyone, and I was like, what do you mean? Obviously you can email each other about it, but I was stupid and I thought, well, I don't know how to invite people without sharing it on social media. But I had gone to a pre-screening that was hosted down in Lake Worth. And so I asked them, I said, what did you do? And they're like, oh, we just band together with a bunch of organizations and they emailed their membership. I'm like, well, duh. And they hosted it at this little theater, like not like a movie theater. It was really, really, really cool. It was really cool. There was about probably like 100 people that showed up for that one.
Well, I hope that we can turn out a great audience to see it ourselves here in Brevard, especially
And
with our
they
local
flew down
heroes.
their producer for that one. And the producer and I did kind of like a talk back at the end. So, you know, there's always potential for them to like make something cool like that happen too.
Well, let's see. We are going to offer the floor one more time to anybody, even those of you that have already spoken. You can ask a question, make your statement to Jennifer, and if not, then we will just proceed. Jennifer, let us reflect on your recommended action items. The first is to go to your website. Again, your website is?
Educatedwestand.com.
And make a contribution, take a look around, refer it to your friends, get the word out about this, because frankly, a lot of people don't know this exists, and we really use for everybody here. I'm asking you, begging you, use your social media. You use whatever platforms you've got to be able to get the word out on this, because it's very much worthy of people's attention and their time and their commitment. This is again, our children are our future. And when we serve them well, when we train our young people well, it is good, not just for us as families, not just for our community, but it is good for us as a species. And it is, we desperately need intelligent people to step up and to lead our country and to provide the services that we will all need in the future. Let's see. I guess one last time, I'm going to remind everybody that November 5th is our election. Jennifer is not running for election, by the way, if you were wondering. She is not. The Space Coast Progressive Alliance has a long history, a long policy of not endorsing candidates, but we certainly can raise issues and educate people on things that are happening. So November 5th is the 2024 election, and that is the last possible moment that you will have to make a difference for our democracy, whether our democracy is going to stand or frankly, whether it will not. The best thing that you can do is to mail in your ballots, get a mail ballot. The current people that have mail ballot requests in, those ballots are being sent out today, or were sent out today, October 3rd. So watch for that coming in your mail in the next couple of days. The deadline, if you want to get a vote by mail ballot, the deadline is October 24th. If you want to register, the deadline is October 7th. That's just 4 days from now. If you're not registered, come on. What are you doing? And then, of course, early voting starts Monday, October 21st through Saturday, November 2nd. This is really, really, really important. This election is the election of our lives. We often say that. You hear that sort of thing with the various elections over the years. I think historians are saying, you betcha, guys, this is it. So everybody, please be involved. Jennifer, we really honestly, if everybody in this room, we were in a room, you'd feel the love. We'd all be able to stand up. In fact, everybody, you're welcome to come off of mute and give Jennifer a great round of applause. Jennifer, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all you've done, for all that your family has done, for all that you've been through. And for all that you're about to do. I think that there were great things in your future. And you need to know that there are many of us that are with you, standing with you. The program must not end here. If you're watching this tonight, we ask you, please just don't keep it to yourself. Spread the word. If somebody wants to see it, it will be on our YouTube channel. Go to our website, www.scpaflorida.com. Our next First Thursday Zoom meeting, as you've already heard, will be about coping with the psychological stress of politics. That will be on Thursday, November 7th. That'll be after the election. One way or another, we are all going to be feeling stress. If we aren't already feeling stress, we know that it's going to be a very, very historic period for our nation, hopefully in a positive way. We are thankful to all of you that took your time to come and join us tonight. Again, please take a good look at the Space Coast Progressive Alliance website. This is time to help a candidate, somebody that you know that's running for office. We don't endorse, again, but we can beg you, please pick a candidate. Help a candidate out. If it means making phone calls, knocking on doors, taking a couple bucks out of your pocket and helping them do something. Don't sit at home and watch TV and yell at your TV or your computer. Do something to change it. We only have a month left. The election is coming upon us. Thank you to Jennifer. Thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. And I'm going to say good night on behalf of the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. Thanks to all of you tonight. Have a beautiful evening. We'll look forward to seeing you next month, November 7th, for our next First Thursday event. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.